Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Teletown Hall on Veteran Caregivers, hosted by the Independence Fund and TRIA, the Enlisted Association, and featuring the two representatives sponsoring Bill H.R. 5701, Representative Richard Hudson of North Carolina and Representative Kathleen Rice of New York. We have a lot's been going on these last couple of days, not only nationally, but also in the caregiver arena. Just today, the final regulation on caregivers was put into the Federal Register for the inspection desk. So we got a copy of it. It'll be in the Federal Register tomorrow. And we'll be, and we're frantically trying to go through all 300 something pages in order to be able to figure out where the final rule is going to come down. This is the regulation that expands the caregiver program to the Vietnam era generation as mandated by the Mission Act, and also sort of revises the caregiver program in order to be able to address some of the issues that some of the folks have raised. With us today, we got, as I said myself, I'm Bob Carey. I'm the Chief Advocacy Officer for the Independence Fund. We also have Ken Greenberg, the Executive Director of TRIA, the Enlisted Association. We're two veteran service organizations that focus on different aspects of the veteran and military population, but we've come into a really good partnership over the last couple of years. The Independence Fund and TRIA are the co-chairs of an organization called the National Military and Veterans Alliance, which is an umbrella group of about 35 veteran organizations. We also have the original sponsor of HR 5701, Congressman Richard Hudson from North Carolina, who represents both Salisbury, where a major VA hospital is, as well as much of Fayetteville, North Carolina, where a large veteran population is. And we also have Representative Kathleen Rice, representative from the 4th District of New York, which is middle of Long Island. In fact, I think we have some folks from her district that are going to be participating as well. She is on the House Veterans Affairs Committee and is the original co-sponsor of the bill, along with Representative Hudson. And then finally, we have Fawn O'Neill, who is a caregiver for her catastrophically disabled husband, as well as a member of the Independence Fund staff. So we're going to be going over, to the extent we can, some of the stuff regarding the regulation, and as well as talking about what we think 5701 will be able to do to resolve this. Ken, I'll turn over to you for your introductory remarks as well. Ken, you're muted.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate the introduction. Thank you, Congressman Hudson. Thank you, Congresswoman Rice, for your sponsorship of 5701. As Bob noted, TRIA, the Enlisted Association, is a strong supporter of the caregiver provisions. I've worked at VA for over 30 years, so I have a good history and understand how the organization works. And TRIA is proud to co-sponsor with the Independence Fund on this issue. We are very disappointed that the proposed rule was not really changed based on an initial evaluation of what was published in the final rule, and we're going to try and highlight some of the things that have caused issues for us and what 5701 will do to help caregivers and veterans as we move forward. So I appreciate the introduction, Bob, and I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, as I said, there's a regulation that was initially proposed back in March of this year by the VA, that is mandated by the Mission Act, which was the big transformational bill for the VA back in 2018, and said that all and the caregiver program, which up to this date has only been for post 9/11 veterans, needed to be expanded to pre 9/11 veterans as well. And they did it in two phases. First phase was for the Vietnam era veterans, 1975 and before. And then the second phase, 2 years after that, will be the 1975 to 2001 veterans. And they really wanted to make sure that the Vietnam era veterans got into the program as quickly as possible. Now, originally, the VA was supposed to have this program up and running by the summer of 2019. But one of the requirements is that the VA had to put in place a new IT tracking system for the caregiver program. And there's been a lot of issues with rolling that out, and they still have not rolled that out. And until the secretary can certify that that system will work, they cannot expand the program. So there's been a lot of delays because of that. And we are being told that that certification should be coming in probably September or October this year. And given that the regulation that just came out has a effective date of the 1st of October, we're all hopeful that they're going to be starting to take applications from Vietnam era veterans for the caregiver program in September or October this year. But that's been a big issue. It's taken a long time, and there haven't really been good explanations why. Now, throughout the years, there's been, the program has been around for about 10 years, and there's been a lot of problems with it. And fortunately, Representative Hudson and Representative Rice were willing to address three of the biggest issues. There's lots of issues with the caregiver program, but three of the biggest ones they were willing to take on. And let me go over what some of those issues were. One is the issue of standardization. And Fawn is going to talk about this in just a second. What we find is that there's a lack of standardization, and many of you that are caregivers that are on the call today understand this. And every different VA medical center and every different caregiver support coordinator implements the rule differently. And so we're calling for national standards, and we're asking for that in the regulation as well. Unfortunately, the regulation does not provide that. Second was the issue of re-eligibility. Every year, at least, the caregiver and veteran are reevaluated for continued participation in the program. And that leads to a very adversarial relationship between the caregiver and veteran and the VA, because every single time they talk with the VA, they think they're going to be dropped from the program. And there's a couple of National Public Radio reports that showed anywhere between 85 and 95% of the caregivers at some of these VA medical centers were being dropped from the program. And it's led twice to the VA having to pause all demotions and discharges from the program. And so what's happened is that people are being told that even though the veteran has no chance of improving, needing a caregiver, they still go through this process, and it leads to a lot of fear. And so we've been calling for a national standard, a permanent caregiver designation. And then the last thing is that when the veteran does pass away, right now the caregiver is only given the stipend and access to the health insurance for another 90 days. After a caregiver has been taking care of a veteran for years and has been unable to work in the market, to expect them to find a job that quick is untenable. And so that's what we've been working on. I'll turn now over to Ken, and he's going to talk about how this worked and how we approach this with regards to HR 5701 and how this led to the drafting of this.
Yes, thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. The real part, the real meat of 5701 is to extend the stipend payments for caregivers and eligibility for CHAMP VA to at least 180 days. Because we think it's very unfair that they only have 90 days or 3 months to retain that eligibility. So by doubling that's a more realistic time frame. It gives them 6 months. It gives people time to deal with the death of their veteran and deal with the aspect of looking for a job instead of being relying on the stipend from the caregiver program. So that's a very important program to a piece of 5701 to extend the benefits for the stipend and the CHAMP VA eligibility, double it from 90 days to 180 days. That's a very important piece. It was not addressed in the regulation, either within the proposed rule or in the final rule. We also, as Bob mentioned, want to reduce the redundancy of the reevaluation piece. That's the annual piece where VA looks at the caregiver and looks at the veteran, and they reevaluate them to maintain if they can stay in the program. That's a bone of contention within the VSO community, and it's really very adversarial, as Bob mentioned earlier. So we're looking to eliminate that and take care of the issue by making it more permanent and making it so that the veteran and the caregiver don't have to go through the annual reevaluation, so they don't have to have the anxiety of being dropped from the program. And then the evaluation process needs to be standardized and covered, instead of having the way VA proposes within the proposed rule, that they want to keep it at the policy level so that there's still too many people making decisions that will lead to inconsistency. It shouldn't matter where you live or what medical center services you within the program. It should be the same decision no matter where you are and no matter what your condition is. So we're looking at those three pieces, and we thank Representative Hudson and Representative Rice for dealing with that from that perspective. And now it's does it go back to Fawn, or do I introduce Representative Rice?
No, Fawn is going to give some examples of the situation she's seen as a caregiver and as a facilitator for other caregivers, as to why the need for this is. Fawn?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. As you guys heard, my name's Fawn O'Neill. I care for my spouse, U.S. Army veteran Danny O'Neill. Danny signed up for the Army on September 11th, 2001. He was 19 years old. Within a month, he had left for basic training, and by February of 2003, he was hit by his first IED in Sadr City, Iraq. Danny went on to do 2-year-long back-to-back deployments to Iraq with the 4th Infantry Division, and his final tour was deadly for his unit. They lost 9 guys during that 12-month deployment, and his unit has lost 15 more to suicide since returning home in December of 2006. So for you, those of you doing the math, that's 1 suicide a year, every year since he's been home. My husband was almost one of them. In 2012, after years of fighting with the Department of Veterans Affairs for an accurate diagnosis, we felt defeated. He went to the VA and he filled all his pills and began to swallow them. Luckily, he lived, but our lives were forever changed. My husband, who led men bravely into battle, couldn't handle the most menial tasks anymore. It wasn't until he was diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury, in addition to post-traumatic stress, that we began to receive the help that we needed through the VA. I then applied for the caregiver program. I had quit my job to save my husband's life, and I thought, gosh, this is going to be a big help. It wasn't. It became a major stressor. And to this day, a visit from our caregiver coordinator sparks anxiety and stress in our home. The system has been set up to be adversarial. And that's just how it is. The VA Mission Act was obviously a positive step forward and corrected an egregious wrong with the exclusion of the pre-9/11 veterans, but there are still some improvements that should be made to the caregiver program to support our nation's veterans and families. As we've all outlined, we're urging Congress to pass H.R. 5701 to legislatively mandate these necessary reforms and do it this calendar year. As the caregiver program manager for the Independence Fund and a caregiver myself, it's alarming the number of stories I have heard and experienced personally regarding differences in the caregiver program across the VISNs. There are no national guidelines that we caregivers can point to when the caregiver program and representatives go rogue. How are we supposed to advocate for ourselves and our veterans when we don't have anything that we can point to and say, look, what you did or what you said isn't right? I personally have had over a half a dozen caregiver coordinators in the span of 1 year, which means not only do I have to retell our story each time, not only does my spouse have to acclimate to a new person each time, I feel like I'm having to prove to each coordinator why I am on the program and why my spouse needs support. So 3 coordinators ago, I was told I would be dropped from the program because what I was doing for my spouse was considered wifely duties. My husband is in his mid-30s. He shouldn't need a fiduciary for his bills, but he does. He shouldn't need someone to watch him constantly for signs of depression and suicide, but he does. He shouldn't need someone to cook his meals, remind him to shower, manage his meds, and drive for him because it's unsafe. But he does, and it's directly related to his service to this country. It's not my wifely duty. A caregiver I was working with in Wisconsin, she is caring for a veteran who's rated 100% and gets SMC for housebound. This veteran has documented falls, needs assistance with dressing, showering, needs meds handed to him, personal hygiene reminders, constant supervision needed for his own safety. Placed in Tier 3, as he should be, by the VA, and was there for many years. New staff came in, and they dropped them from the program altogether. The caregiver coordinator dug into the personal life of this veteran and caregiver and actually printed out Facebook posts and brought them to the caregiver meeting. The caregiver coordinator claimed the fact that the husband hunts and fishes as a reason for being dropped from the program. Caregiver coordinator also stated the veteran applied for flight school as a reason for being dropped. This was all evidence they found on Facebook. They failed to include that it was a special needs flight school for handicapped and disabled people, not an actual pilot school. And that caregiver was dropped from the program. Help us. We need a national standard. While the proposed rule did provide national eligibility standards, the processes that drive the program are not standardized in the regulation. And we are asking to please give us the tools, me, a caregiver, the tools to help advocate for ourselves by putting that in there. We also need a permanent caregiver designation. The proposed rule specifically rejected that concept. Another caregiver caring for a 100% permanent total veteran in the Washington state area, very high double leg amputee with a severe TBI who cannot drive, cannot cook. The veteran cannot use prosthetics because the amputations are too high. This veteran was in the ILP program for 4 years while the VA tried to teach him to read. He can't read and was given a letter that his condition is static and will not improve and likely will get worse with age. This couple lived in Ohio initially, where they were on Tier 3 from the time he left Walter Reed in 2006 to 2017. He moved to Washington State, where he was dropped altogether from the caregiver program. Medical professionals at the VA noted his condition is static, will not improve, and likely will get worse with age. And somehow, between Ohio and Washington visits, he was dropped from the program altogether. Eventually, he was put back on the program at Tier 1. The fact that he's Tier 1 is atrocious, not to mention that he is subject to reevaluations each year to prove he still qualifies for the program. We need a permanent caregiver designation for people like this family. And finally, we're asking for an extension of the stipend post-death. The proposed rule was silent on that, and extending the stipend and CHAMP VA benefits, keeping them at 90 days after the death of the veteran. I truly cannot imagine losing my veteran and in the midst of grief, trying to find a job to keep a roof over my head. The extension to the stipend post-death to 6 months is honestly just the right thing to do. So thank you guys for your time. Those are my thoughts and my stories, and I hope that you guys have gained something from them.
Thank you very much, Fawn. That's really helpful. Back in the beginning of this year, we approached Representative Hudson about some of these issues, and he was very forward-leaning on this, and we very much appreciate his leadership on this. So I'll turn now over to Representative Hudson from North Carolina to discuss the process that he went through in determining this and what he sees back in North Carolina with caregivers as well.
Great. Well, thank you, Bob. And let me thank all of you for joining us here today. Especially like to thank my colleague, Representative Kathleen Rice from New York, who's been an incredible partner on this. She really has a heart for our veterans, and I really appreciate her help. I'd also like to thank the Independence Fund and TRIA for not only your support on this bill, but also for the work you do on behalf of our nation's veterans and caregivers every single day. You know, as Fort Bragg's congressman and a voice for our North Carolina veterans, making sure veterans and their families get the support they deserve has always been a top priority for me. You've already heard today from how the VA caregiver program is not just a resource for veterans, but it's also a critical lifeline And as such, we have to do everything we can to support caregivers like Fawn and so many other courageous individuals who are making these incredible sacrifices to care for our veterans. During my time in Congress, I've gotten to know a lot of the veterans and caregivers in our community. One of the things that strikes me so much is just the love and compassion that you demonstrate every single day. None of our veterans asked or were expecting to become disabled, and none of you as caregivers were expecting to have your lives so dramatically changed either. But just as each veteran answered the call that our nation sent out, you as a caregiver have answered the call, and you continue to provide for your loved one every single day. Unfortunately, I've heard from over and over from vets and their families about the challenges of accessing the caregiver program. And again, while it may be critical for our disabled veterans and their caregivers, there's a lot of room for improvement. And I think, Fawn very eloquently outlined some of those specifics. I continue to hold roundtables and discussions with veterans and caregivers in my district. The last one we did in person was pre-COVID at the VA Medical Center in Salisbury, just to engage caregivers and try to really understand what the needs are. And it was very clear to me early on that these were three areas that Bob and Ken and Fawn have highlighted that are critical, that need to be fixed. And so that's why I reached out to Representative Kathleen Rice from New York, because I knew she's just been a real champion for our veterans. She serves on the committee and was really pleased that she was willing to work with me to introduce HR 5701. She's a Democrat from New York. I'm a Republican from North Carolina. We're different in a lot of ways, but I'm thankful that one thing we can agree on in Congress is taking care of our veterans and our caregivers. And I'm just glad it's such a priority for you too, Representative Rice. I won't go into any more detail about the bill. I think y'all have done a good job to highlight it, but simply put, this is critical legislation for our veterans and caregivers here in North Carolina and around the country. We now have a number of co-sponsors. I'm hopeful now that final regs are out. More folks who support this bill, but we're waiting, will now co-sponsor, so we'll get even more support built up. I'll just ask each of you to join me in reaching out to Chairman Mark Takano and Ranking Member Dr. Phil Rowe of the Veterans Affairs Committee to ask them to advance this legislation. It's got pure bipartisan support. It's the right thing to do. And I think now the regulations are out, the timing is perfect for us to really make a push for this. And with that, just want to thank you all again for everything you do, and I'll turn it back over to you, Ken.
Thank you, Congressman Hudson, for your nice words, and we appreciate everything that you've done. It's my pleasure to introduce Representative Kathleen Rice from New York. She served on the Veterans Affairs Committee since she was elected to Congress in 2015, and she has an important role. She's on the Subcommittee of Oversight Investigations and the Economic Opportunity Committee. She works to improve all kinds of veterans services and important programs to our veterans and advocates for critical reforms within the VA. We appreciate your support, Congresswoman Rice, and we appreciate your support for this bill and look forward to continue working with you. And now it's my pleasure to give you the floor and let you make some remarks about the Caregivers Program. So thank you again.
Well, thank you so much, Ken. And first, what I'd like to say is that we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my good friend, Congressman Hudson. I mean, this has been his baby from the very beginning. And when he reached out to me, it took me zero time to say, I want to be in this with you and let's get this done. One of the things, listening to Fawn, I mean, you brought tears to my eyes, just, the stories that you were telling. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for being such a wonderful woman and caregiver. What I think the VA doesn't understand is that it is not just the service person who is serving. When your husband, Fawn, signed up, his whole family signed up. Any children that he has, that you have, or any wife or husband that you have, they might as well be wearing the uniform as well. And it kills me to see the VA not put policies in place that honor all of the care and time and effort and sacrifice that family members give, as well as the active duty member. And this is just one example. When someone is terribly wounded and they need a caregiver, and someone in the family steps up, we have to be there for all of you. And this COVID is kind of screwing things up in terms of doing in-person hearings and stuff like that, but we are still doing virtual hearings. We do remote voting. We have kind of stepped our game up in the light of COVID, because life doesn't end just because you're going through a pandemic. And what I would like to suggest, and I can't tell you how what a great champion Chairman Decano is, and Ranking Member Rowe. I mean, just as an aside, I am trying to get the motto of the VA changed so it becomes more inclusive, because it only talks about he who wore the uniform, and it doesn't acknowledge all the women, over 2 million women who have served. And Dr. Rowe has agreed to co-sponsor that with me, and he has been such a champion, and I think he could be a really great ally for us in this. And so what I would like to suggest is that I see if we can get a hearing on the caregiver issue and our bill specifically sometime between now and the end of September. Just because we're not going to be in DC in August doesn't mean that we can't put together a hearing like this. And I'm going to do my best to get the chairman to see if we could do that. So, and just to add to what Congressman Hudson was saying, I think now that we're going to diving through these regulations, I think this is going to be a really great opportunity, and I will work this with you too, Rich, to get more people on board to sign on board to the bill. Because if the regulations are not going to reflect how important caregivers are, then we're going to have to legislate it. So I want to thank you all so much for your willingness to share your stories, your advocacy, your passion. I echo what Congressman Hudson said about just, this is such important stuff that we have to get this done. We just have to get it done. And I'm so glad that he reached out to me, and we're going to get this across the finish line. So thank you all so much for hosting this today. And I look forward to talking about this at an actual hearing as well.
Thank you very much, Representative Rice. So I'm gonna try something. Maybe I shouldn't, but I'm gonna try to show you the screen of what we're gonna ask you all to do that are on this. Let me see if I can share my screen. And here we go. And hopefully you all see the action center that the Independence Fund uses. Now, this is a joint Independence Fund TRIA activity, but we can't figure out how to put TRIA's logo up on the top because we're paying for this. So sorry about that, TRIA. But we put your name really big up here. So this is a call to action, and everyone that's on the call today, you'll be receiving a follow-up email that gives you a link to this page. And it is a request of the House Veterans Affairs Committee to bring up HR 5701 for a legislative hearing and a markup as soon as possible. It gives you all the information here on the left-hand side as to what the bill does, and then over here you can actually see the actual letter that we're going to send to the representatives. And you know, if you have experience working these sort of legislative issues, and you know your representative well, encourage them to sign on to 5701 as well. We'll be sending a follow-on action as well, asking for members to sign on to 5701 as co-sponsors. But this is what we'll be doing. Now, we have to ask for your street address and your cell phone number, because the street address, that's how we make sure that bots don't invade and send in a bunch of letters falsely. So and we marry up the IP address, geographic location, to the street address, and if it's not close by, then we don't accept that. So that's a protection for the whole grassroots advocacy process. And you know, but these have an effect. These work. People, you know, when members see a lot of this at the same time, they take notice, and hopefully this will also help us in terms of engaging the committee and getting the committee to move this forward. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now, so you all saw that, and hopefully I didn't screw things up. I was an officer in the Navy, and the last thing that my chief would ever let me do is work with technological equipment. Wise man. We have some questions, and let me just bring those up real quick. Okay, from Lee in Fayetteville for Representative, well, either one can answer this. So what are our options if veterans and caregivers are dropped from the program unjustifiably? Can congressional offices help out? So I guess it's sort of like a constituent affairs thing.
Absolutely. And, you know, if you're in Kathleen Rice's district or you're in my district, please reach out to us. Folks, you can go to our website. It's probably lists all of our different offices. Mine is hudson.house.gov. I imagine yours is rice.house.gov. And if you're in Fayetteville, you can call my office at 910-997-2070, or go to the website and has all of our office numbers there, or you can also send an email. But please reach out to us if you're having any problems with the caregiver program. I can't guarantee an outcome, but I promise we'll go to bat for you and make sure that you get everything you deserve. But please reach out to us.
And I know that the Independence Fund, we also have a caseworker that can help on these things, as does, and TRIA has service officers. And so, you know, you can approach the Independence Fund, and we've been doing a lot of caregiver appeals cases. Fawn has been working on that. One of our great caseworkers, Robert Becker, who's been doing casework for congressional offices and for us for about 20 years, is really good at this. So we can try to help out as well. And pretty much every congressional office has constituent services. And you either go to their website and they'll show you, there'll be on the pull down menu, a constituent service menu, or you call up their district office. And if you just Google, how do I find my congressman? You put in your address and they'll bring up the representative's name and phone numbers. Did you want to say something, Representative Rice?
I just wanted to add that, you know, this is the exact, this is exactly what our offices are open for. I mean, when we're in DC, we're doing a lot of the hearings and all that kind of stuff. But every single day, even if Rich and I are here, back home, we have an office full of people whose job it is to answer just these kind of problems, because people have issues with getting their Social Security or Medicaid, all of these issues. And it's like a labyrinthian maze to try to kind of figure out how to solve a problem. And so I just want to echo what Congressman Hudson said about just call us up. It's very easy to get in contact. We both have people heading our district offices that will hook you up with the right legislative assistant or the community representative. And they can certainly, again, not guaranteeing an outcome, but it certainly helps when you have a congressional office call, as opposed to someone that maybe the person on the other end of the phone thinks that they can just puts it in a pile of things to do tomorrow.
From Marie in Long Beach, New York, for either one, what are the top things that the folks that are on the call today can do to help you advocate for them and advocate for the bill? What do you need most from the field, from the grassroots?
Well, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for what you do, Marie. I should have started that way with Lee. The most, Bob mentioned, if you can send a message through the website, if you can share the link to that website to your network of friends and colleagues and family around the country, particularly, you know, we want to reach into other congressional districts. We want to get our colleagues to hear from their constituents as well. The more people reaching out, the more people contacting their member of Congress, talking about how important HR 5701 is to you. That's really important. Kathleen, this is your constituent. I should let you go first.
My constituent, yes. Although you gave a very good answer, Rich. But look, just be involved, get the word out. You know, we're going to do our part to reach out to our colleagues and get them to sign on to this as well. But it doesn't hurt to have phone calls coming in saying, please ask my representative to take a look at this bill.
And then from Maggie in Salisbury, sort of the same thing. What could we share with you to help us advocate? What information would be most? So do you guys want personal stories? Does that help you in dealing with the committee, or should we collect those from, the letters and do that? What is most helpful? Like, what are the specific things that we can put together?
So Bob, I don't think there's anything more powerful than someone like Fawn coming in front of a committee or putting their story and sharing it on Facebook or wherever social media platforms you use. I mean, these are compelling stories. Your family sacrificed to keep the freedoms that I hold so dear, and I'm a member of Congress, so I think that the sharing of the stories, there's nothing that is more profound and more illustrative of the need to get this bill passed. That's what I'm sure. I don't know how Rich feels about that, but
Amen. Agree 100%.
What are there other caregiver legislative issues that you're tracking in the committee that you think are helpful, and how can we help on those?
Well, I mean, look, right now there is a big focus, and this is to Fawn, what your husband is suffering from. There's a big focus, right? Well, actually two: mental health, because there's just too many veteran suicides every day. So that is a big focus of the committee right now. And something that I believe, Bob, you mentioned before, it's the technology. They are so, I hate to be critical of the VA because I know that they believe their mission and they try to carry it out every day as well as they can, but they have got to get with the program in terms of this stuff. I mean, that's all there is to it. So those are some of the, and by the way, that might not be specifically caregiver related, but they all of these things are interrelated. Mental health aspect is, and certainly getting the platform ready so that, you can ease the process of the application process and all the rest. Certainly that's going to help caregivers as well.
Along those lines, one of the attendees put something up as well. Dallas Blaney, who's the executive director of Challenge America, they're working with the Veterans Health Administration on some technology challenge projects. And one of the things they're looking at is on the needs of in-home caregivers. So we'll be sending out the information on that as well. They're willing to, they're basically doing some alpha testing right now, and I think we're looking for some caregivers to help out in terms of figuring this out.
I read that message, Bob. I'd love to, I'm sure if Congressman Hudson and I can also get hooked up with that, that'd be great.
That'd be awesome. Sort of more for VSOs and member of Congresses together, my initial look at the draft regulation is that despite almost 300 comments, that the VA did not accept one idea to change the proposed rule. I mean, it's 300 pages, so I haven't looked through it already. All yet. I just saw it this morning, but I did a quick search for changes, and every single one that I came up with said, we are making no changes at this time. We are not accepting this change. We're not doing a change. How do we deal with the VA and something like that, with that sort of blanket unwillingness? Or do we just go the legislative route and say, that's never going to work?
Bob, can I just add my
my
insight? I think the frustrating part, and you and I talked about this, and Congressman Hudson and Congresswoman Rice, for them to turn, for OMB to turn a final rule around in 30 days is unheard of. So when we heard that,
and for people that don't know, OMB is the Office of Management and Budget, and they're the folks that manage all the regulations.
And that's part of the White House. And for them to turn it around in 30 days, Bob and I knew there weren't going to be any changes. And with over 300 comments, we'll go through it and we'll feed things out to the community, out to the VSO community, and to you guys as members of Congress and to the committee. But there needs to be some effort. They can't just dismiss all the comments that were made, and they were valid comments based on eligibility, based on how the caregivers are dealt with. And it's very frustrating from our point of view for them to just, like I said, not take anything. And it's unfortunate that we think the people within the program are willing to look at things, but as it moves up the chain within Veterans Health Administration and up the VA chain, it sort of gets squashed. So they're not able to move forward with things. So I know that TRIA can put together a number of things, and we'll look forward to funneling them to you to work through the committee people.
For both of you, given this regulation just came out, is it a better strategy for us to ask for a broader hearing on caregiver regulation and the caregiver program writ large, or should we focus on 5701?
Well, I think that we can expand. We can talk about anything that we want at a hearing. Certainly, look, this happens a lot. The period for comments, that is really, really short. I mean, you're not the only ones that have made suggestions about changes and have been totally ignored. It's unfortunate that, say, there are going to be like financial regulations that are coming out. Oh, they have no problem extending the time period for big banks to weigh in because, they write big check. I mean, I hate to sound like this, but the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so everyone on this call, when you say, what else can we do? Like, be involved, scream it out, let your voice be heard. But unfortunately, at this point, we can try through the committee to get them to maybe see if they can address some of these things that they did not, these recommendations that they did not accept to put in this final rule. But look, we always have, this is what this legislation is all about, right? If you're not going to take our recommendation, we're not going to give you a choice.
Great. So we got about 5 minutes left before I go to the last question. Is there anything that any one of the panelists wants to talk about or talk to before we go to that last question that we missed or you thought needed to be brought up?
Bob, I just want to add that TRIA has already published things on our Facebook and Twitter page related to this event, related to 5701, and we will continue to do that and do outreach. It's been featured as part of our Voice magazine that goes out quarterly. So we're continuing to push it. It's a priority for us, and we're continuing to do outreach as part of the co-chair effort of NMVA. We'll look to bring other VSOs into the process.
And please do share. When you get the email and you see the social media posts regarding the signing on to the letter, please do share that with your networks, because it won't end with this letter. We're going to need to have follow-on activity in order to be able to push this across the finish line, get more co-sponsors, make this enough of a squeaky wheel that that the committee will take this up, and we're going to need your continued effort along those lines. So please keep track of that. Look for our emails. Look on our social media. We'll be posting both TRIA and TIF, and we'll be posting a lot of this, and we really do appreciate that. Anyone else? Okay. Well, actually, the rest of the questions were more along the same lines of what we already had. So I think we've finished up pretty much. I really want to thank Representative Hudson and Representative Rice for their time today, for their insight on what we need to do, and for their leadership on this. We have a lot of work ahead of us over the next month, but it's doable. And it's doable with the people we have here. Fawn, I really appreciate your time, your openness, and your authenticity in relaying both your story, your family's story, and the stories of other caregivers who have suffered under the system. And Ken, I really want to thank you for your leadership on this, for everything you've been doing to support this, and for the leadership that TRIA has been showing as well. And finally, Jody, I want to thank you for managing me and managing this technological morass. So thank you very much. If anyone has anything before we go, a quick shout out to Lisa Colella, who's the founder of Healing Household 6 in Charlotte. Apparently she's already gotten to page 193. Good job, Lisa. Man, that's much farther than I've gotten. Bob, if anyone has any other insights, please feel free to pass those along to us as well. For the Independence Fund, email address you can always reach is advocacy@independencefund.org.
Bob, I just want to say thank you for including us. Thanks for putting this together today, and thank you to everyone who joined. For the caregivers out there, you're my heroes. You're out there every single day doing the Lord's work, and we've got your back. And now the call to action is reach out to your networks, people you know across the country. They all need to be reaching out to their members of Congress and sharing their personal stories, because that's really where the power is. And I'm glad folks who didn't know Congresswoman Kathleen Rice got to see her in action today, how smart she is and why she's the right advocate. She's going to, I'm glad we're on the same team on this, and we're going to keep pushing.
Amen to everything you said. Thank you all.
And thank you all. And we'll follow up with both of your offices so you can make sure that we connect good with Tria and our social media person also, so that you can get, we can make sure all of our posts get to your people as well. So thank you. And thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.